On our first point today, we look at the shocking news that IQ scores are dropping. The Flynn effect describes IQ scores rising 3 to 5 points every decade since the 1930s. Shockingly, that trend has reversed in the latest data. That means for almost 100 years, people who had no computers, no smartphones, no artificial intelligence, people who probably never traveled outside of their home state, rode on an airplane, people without air conditioning, those people got more and more intelligent every decade. So how is it that we are the most resourced people and we are the ones who are falling behind? We have more education. Most people are starting their kids in education at like 3 years old or pre-K 4, and they're going all the way through 12th grade. More kids than ever are graduating high school. More people than ever are going on to further their education in university. And yet, IQ, which doesn't just measure your ability to pass a grade, it measures your actual intelligence. It is now on the decline. And the obvious question is, how do we have more resource and more convenience and more education and more technology, and we're now seemingly getting less intelligent? That seems like the obvious question, but it also might be a part of the answer. Technology has changed things, and it's brought a level of convenience that at this point we take for granted. If you're mid-30s or above, there are some things that you did as a kid that are so unique to you that will never happen again. For instance, somewhere in lower elementary school, you started wanting to communicate with your friends outside of the school day, which meant you had to call them because there was no email and there was no text messaging. There weren't social media sites, which little kids shouldn't be on anyway, side note. You had to actually pick up a phone and call them, which meant you had to know their phone number. And at 8 or 9 years old, you would have in your brain a Rolodex, which, if you're like 25 and younger, you don't know what a Rolodex is. So even my analogies are outdated here. But you would have a massive list of phone numbers, 7-digit or 10-digit phone numbers memorized that you carried around in your mind all of the time. And you would pick up an actual phone, a landline, and you would punch those numbers in. Or if you're even more on the, millennial, upper millennial, Gen X and beyond, you might have even rotated those bad boys into a rotary phone. You had all of this stored in your mind. You knew your home address. When you got to around middle school and you started being able to travel and go other places, you knew your home address. You knew your friends' home addresses. You knew your grandparents' home addresses. And now we give our middle schoolers smartphones, and all they have to do is open Google Maps or Apple Maps, and all they have to do is just push a button that says home, and it will give them directions. Not to mention, when you were growing up, you had to know how to read a map, right? The spatial reasoning and figuring things out. And that's something that is long gone and will never be around again. And even with us growing up, we had to learn how to use, a little bit more advanced calculators, which I was never very good at. When we were young, we had to learn mental math. You had to be able to do some pretty complex math in your head. And now we're beyond that. Now you can just Google the answers to the most complex math problems imaginable with artificial intelligence coming down the pike. All of this that I'm talking about is only going to get easier and more convenient. Growing up, you had to be able to pass a spelling test, and you had to be able to write a letter and have like proper, appropriate spelling in there. Now we have autocorrect on every device that our kids are using in school. Now we have Grammarly, which we can run through and not only get our spelling correct, but get all of our grammar correct as well. So with this convenience, we can appear smarter and appear more advanced when at the same time, we no longer have the necessity of the computational skills, the memorization skills, the spatial reasoning skills, so many of these things that were just missing because of our development. It's a story in the New York Post talking about what's going on here. IQ scores in the US have fallen for the first time in decades. The future may not be as bright. IQ scores, that's a pun. The future may not be as bright. New York Post, bringing it hard. IQ scores have decreased in the US for the first time in decades. New research from the scientists at Northwestern University and the University of Oregon suggest The study, which was first published in the journal Intelligence this month, indicated that IQ levels had lowered, especially for those with less education in the 18 to 22 age group. The researchers set out to determine whether or not the Flynn effect, the steady increase in IQ scores across generation, had changed from 2006 to 2018 in the US. Younger generations are expected to have a higher IQ score than the previous age group. Since 1932, average IQ scores have increased around 3 to 5 points per decade, the research explained. They went on to find that for the first time, we have reversed the Flynn effect. So we're more advanced. You can conceivably, if you have a high drive and a high work ethic, I know I have a friend who did this. You can drop out of school your sophomore year, and with some hard work and YouTube tutorials, man, you can build a business. By 18, you can be flipping houses and making real money. There's more opportunity, and there's more input, and we have more information. And we are the most knowledgeable generations who have ever lived, because all of the information from all of human history, it exists inside of our pockets. And at the same time, our IQ scores, our actual measure of intelligence, are beginning to lower. There's an interesting proverb. It says, where there are no oxen, the manger is clean. But it's through their strength that abundant crops are achieved. So it's like, look, you can have a clean manger. You can keep your barn nice and tidy. Just don't put any oxen in there. However, without any oxen, you're not going to bring in abundant crops. So if you want to really grow, you want to grow your intelligence, you want to grow your skill sets, it's going to take hard work. It's going to take a messier route to learning multiplication than just pushing a button and asking your phone the question of what times what equals what. You have to learn some actual skill sets. The book of James says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. We have done away almost entirely with the need for actual computation, memorization. Everything is so convenient, and it's a huge blessing. But at the same time, we're seeing some side effects from this. And look, I'm pointing at one potential reason the Flynn effect may be reversed and our IQs may be dropping. And there's a whole host of reasons. What's going on inside the home, and we have more single parent households than we've ever had before. Our diets are changing, and they are becoming more and more artificial, it seems, by the day. This is a multifaceted, multivariable reason that scores in the West are dropping for the first time. I do think that this is a key component of it. Plato has this famous allegory of the cave. And in Plato's cave, there are people who are chained to the inside of a cave with nothing but firelight behind them, which means all they can see are the shadows on the wall. And that's all they've known their whole life. So to them, the shadows have actually become reality. And when they are released into the real world, they struggle with this new reality, which is actual reality, because all they've ever known is the shadows. And we are so plugged in to technology. We are so plugged into social media. And research is showing more and more that, especially for our younger generations, Gen Z, that the digital world is realer to them than the real world. In a very real sense, they're in a version of Plato's cave, and they're building incredible skill sets in the digital world at younger ages than any of us. I mean, it's like an old trope, but you can hand your kid your phone if you have a problem, and they will figure it out in a fraction of the time that you can figure it out. That's the world that they live in. However, IQ is a measurement of your real world intelligence. And so when they come out of their digital caves, they're having to struggle with real world skill sets. And if all of the computers crashed and all of the internet crashed and we had a real cyber attack and we couldn't just press a button or type into Google and it do all of our computation for us, we can have a real problem, because we're not learning to memorize things, and we're not learning actual reasoning. Our computers can do that for us. And we're not learning how to actually do math in our brains or on scratch paper. And so, yes, I'm like the old guy yelling at the sky. This isn't going anywhere. Maybe none of it matters, because maybe technology is just going to increase. And who cares if you have a low IQ? Because if you can use that technology efficiently, then you can be just as successful or more successful than others. I happen to think that your actual level of intelligence really does matter. And if for no other reason, it's because we are called to pursue wisdom. Wisdom and intelligence are not the same thing, but an aspect of wisdom is being able to think through things at deep levels. And intelligence is one of the markers of being able to think in multifaceted and diverse ways, being able to problem solve in unique and creative ways. That's a marker of intelligence. And all of those things play into wisdom. And the more that you are able to exercise your knowledge, your intelligence, your skill sets, and pair that with the fundamentals of wisdom. Wisdom is like intelligence applied into your life in meaningful ways. And as our IQ lowers, our capacity for wise decision making can lower. And we're already living in a world that lacks wisdom significantly. We don't need any help making unwise choices. And if we continue to degrade our intelligence, we could really hurt our capacity to exercise wisdom in the real world. So even if there is not some cyber attack where we all go dark and we have no internet for the rest of time and only the people who know how to do math in their head can actually lead the country, even if that doesn't happen, if for nothing else, we should be doing real work, not just based on convenience in the real world. We should be leading our kids to be bored sometimes, to be off of screen sometimes, to limit their social media usage sometimes, to build real world skill sets, to build IQs so that we can exercise wisdom.